Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. You guys are in for a real treat. I've got a little whole monologue. Our special guest this week is James Lindsay. His book, Race Marxism, I named one of my two favorite books I read, I think, in 2023. His most recent book is called The Queering of the American Child, co-authored with Logan Lansing. He also co-authored How to Have Impossible Conversations with Peter Boghossian, a book I learned a lot about. So there's a long backstory of how you're here, and this is actually really funny because I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, we're wrapping up the year. Who do I love talking to that I respect their perspective so much that I'd rather sit down and shut up when we disagree and hear their point of view, because even if I end up disagreeing with them at the end, I'm positive they're going to say something that I hadn't considered. And you're one of two people I booked. After I booked you, I go on Twitter and I see you beefing with my buddies Dave Smith and Tom Woods. Then I was on Tom's show, and I said this to Tom, and I'll say this to you. It really, and this is not a commentary on any individual in this situation. It really bums me out when people who I like and respect go at it. Like, it just makes me sad. And then the other person who I booked, Mike Cernovich, I see you go at it with him the day the episode drops. There's a lot to unpack. One of the things, the first question I want to ask you, all seriousness, I saw a tweet where you just recently had this great prank, which I really want to get into, which is absolutely hilarious. I saw this tweet where you said that we're in hell. And I thought that was very odd because I think people in what I guess could be very loosely called the liberty movement seem to be in a cautiously optimistic state of mind. So I really want to know why you think we're in hell.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why I would have said that. That might have been a contextual hell.
Okay.
Yeah, that might have been, in general that we're facing this communist revolution
Yes.
broadly, and it's probably that. I don't remember the context of that, so that really blows your first question, unfortunately. I have no idea why I said that. This is like where I was in this deposition with this ACLU lawyer grilling me the other day.
Oh.
Uh, I mean, it's okay. I'm an expert witness. They're supposed to try to disqualify me, so
Oh,
we had
sure,
this like
sure.
this whole thing. And so he's grilling me, asking me all these questions. And he's like, "Did you tweet this?" And I'm like, "Sounds like something I would have said. I have no idea,"
Well,
over and over and over again.
Well,
Uh,
I'm glad to hear that you don't think that we're in hell, because I think we dodged a bullet, because I think and I want to hear your thoughts very much on this. Canada and the UK especially were trial runs for cracking down on speech and brazen authoritarianism with popular support. And Tim Walz was talking about stuff like this pretty openly. He had a snitch line during COVID, and
yeah.
that was my major concern with this election. And I'm curious if you agree with that perspective.
No, I agree. I definitely. I mean, it's funny because it's literally true. Also, that we dodged a bullet here. Uh, yeah. So I mean, I do think we dodged a bullet. I think that I'm afraid that we're overstating what has occurred with this bullet dodging, right? We could use a variety of metaphors. For example, that there are still bullets flying, that the gunman who is, maybe Larry Fink, I don't know, has still got the machine gun in his hand, or whatever. We could also say, well, we've taken the beach at Normandy, but we haven't quite got to Berlin yet. That's still a long, ugly way away. The Pacific Theater, which is now Chinese, not Japanese, is still looming. And with BRICS, this is like what's going on. So I worry that, we've got this kind of, you know, drunkenness of having, the drunkenness with the relief of having won this first important battle. And I'm concerned about that. But no, I think we did dodge a bullet. I do agree with you also. I've said many times, in fact, well, this is how I've said it recently, but I've said many times for years now that had Hillary Clinton won the election in 2016, she would have done to America what Justin Trudeau did to Canada. So if there's
100%.
any question what that would
Much
have looked
worse.
like,
I think
all
much
you have
worse.
to do is look at Canada, right? And then I think the 2024 election, we were given a preview in the UK with Keir Starmer.
Yes.
And I mean, people have asked me, well, what would have happened if the Democrat before the election? What will happen if they win? And after the election, what would have happened if Kamala had won? And my answer has always been just look at Keir Starmer.
Yep.
Look at what happens when you put a full blown Fabian socialist, aka non Marxist communist, into power. And that's the recipe. And of course, the immigrants are a different body of immigrants with
Sure.
some different properties, but the immigrants are still immigrants in both cases. The entire kind of upside down Koreanizatsiya, Soviet indigenization program is going to get run full blast on us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, two
So yeah,
quick
we
points.
agree.
One, my favorite author, whose autograph is hanging over my desk in my Hall of Heroes, is E. Nesbitt, and she was a Fabian socialist. And one of her novels was considered lost for many years, and I found a copy, and I'm republishing it this month, bringing it back from the grave. But we like her for her author for fiction and not her ballads to socialism, which she literally authored. And to your point about Hillary, people have very short memories, and they forget that as 2016 election was approaching, fake news was a Hillary term, because the argument was everyone, all the top CEOs, all the universities, all the newspapers. I think there was some kind of like historical society. We've never endorsed anyone for president since Lincoln. We're endorsing Hillary. It's like, look, everyone who this was the argument. Everyone who has a brain in their head knows that Hillary is the only choice. Even if you don't like her, this is night and day. And we have to crack down on this fake news on the internet that is causing people to stray from just basic human decency. And the thing that I think conservatives don't appreciate is progressivism doesn't give up. And this is not a progressive idea. North Korea has a 10 commandments that the great leader Kim Il-sung. And the 10th commandment is the revolution shall be completed through the Paektu dynasty, through the generations until the end. Now, what that means in practice is only a descendant of the great leader Kim Il-sung can be leader, but it also means we're not stopping. It
That's
has
right.
to keep going until we have total victory. A good example of this, easy example, President Truman wanted socialized healthcare. It took 30, 40 years for Bill Clinton to put it forward. But when they lost, they weren't like, okay, we lost this one. They're going to keep trying. So
Yeah.
yes, maybe Trump stopped this for 4 years, but the idea that the media elites are just going to be perfectly happy with Twitter upstaging their apple cart and they're not going to use government power to enforce this is deranged, including lawfare.
Oh yeah, totally. And, you say that they have short memories. They also, 2016, believe it or not, was a blissful time, and we had many sweet summer children who have since been disabused of their naive views of reality. I am one such sweet summer child, so I'm not putting anybody down with that. The last 8 years have been a massive time of awakening in a lot of ways, and of course, Trump stealing and doing the Uno reverse with fake news
Yeah.
was probably one of the most influential first steps in that process. But what a lot of people didn't know, in the fact that they were sweet summer children in 2000, somewhat 15, but 16 in particular, if you want a treat, although they've scrubbed the website to a degree, you should see the articles that the World Economic Forum was publishing in 2016, when they were absolutely certain Hillary Clinton was going to march into the White House and their program was going to launch full blast. They were the most prolific and, in fact, kind of the most horrifyingly deranged. That famous video, "You Will Own Nothing and You Will Be Happy," came out in 2016. This was when they were on their totalizing march. Like, this is ours. Everything is ours. Hillary and then Trudeau and whoever else are going to help us usher this in through the entire West. So "You Will Own Nothing and You'll Be Happy" was part of it. Their, role of faith in global systemic challenges that was to transform the entire religious architecture of the country was part of it. And this all would have happened, very quickly and very almost silently is not quite right, but people wouldn't have understood what was happening around them to the degree that we do now because of that being unaware. So that was a very pivotal time. And again, I mean, when we do these kinds of analyses, you and I tend to agree virtually across the board.
The one thing I would just slightly point out, I'm sure you're not going to disagree, Hillary wouldn't have been like Trudeau. She would have done it with glee.
Oh
Trudeau
yeah.
seems to kind of have this kind of like, oh, I got it. This sucks. I got to do this. This is the price you pay. I'm not happy. She'd be tap dancing. I mean,
Oh
she
yeah.
would be giddy about it.
I mean, this seems to be her personality.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm very curious what you think of uh, the other thing that I'm kind of I hate, okay, there's a very Russian thing that as soon as something goes well, the Russian dad or mom has to find something wrong with it and just pull the rug out. It's like, can I have 5 minutes? Just like, give me 5 minutes to be happy before you find an issue.
Knit.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about Elon and Vivek with this whole Doge thing, and how successful do you think they'll be?
I think a lot about this Doge, and I'm actually generally positive toward Doge. I do have concerns. I don't want to pull your rug out
Sure.
until we get 5 or 6 minutes in, but I mean, I do have concerns, and they're the generic kind of libertarian concerns, which is what would a subsequent administration do with such a tool? And I haven't really thought through that yet. I hear other people who I think are smart talk about that and say concerning things, but I haven't put a lot of brain power on it. So I don't really know. But what I have considered is, will Doge be able to accomplish what it claims?
Right.
I think that it will accomplish some, undoubtedly, and what it accomplishes will mostly be good. I will also say that I think Elon Musk is going to run into the same problem that Donald Trump ran into in 2016, which is that you enter into these administrative apparatuses thinking you're going to run it like a company, only to find out that the administrative apparatus does not work like a company. And in fact, the administrative apparatus has way more tools than your employees do to undercut you as, say, CEO. So that I don't think it's going to be this, you know, amazing, oh my gosh, it fixed everything program, but I do think it's going to be very useful. But the thing that I'm actually most positive about where it comes to Doge is, besides being, grimly amused by the name, uh, the name actually, I was one of those people back in 2016 and 17 when Trump was memeing everything that I hated it. I was like, that's not presidential. I was so stuck up. And now I'm like, this shit's funny. Um,
Yes.
and funny is okay. But the fact of the matter is that their commitment to be very transparent to the point where I think we're going to get a lot of kind of administrative state so-called Twitter files. We're going to get to see a lot more behind the curtain than we have
Yeah.
before. Is I think going to be the most impactful thing that entity is going to end up accomplishing when we kind of look back later. Now, one point of concern is the CEO effect. When it comes down to like how the government works, when you have a guy, or in this case, two guys, Vivek and Elon, who are basically making the decisions about government efficiency. That means they're deciding what the government will and won't spend money on, which means they're really the guys, which is exactly what Trump was getting undercut by in 16 through 20. They're the guys that hold literally the balls of the government. So they're in a sense they're not the boss, but they're the bosses.
Yeah.
They're the key decision makers. And I'm not going to get into some like spin about either Vivek or Elon's ideology because I don't think that it's particularly relevant here. I'm always skeptical, and this people don't understand. They're like, James is attacking. No, no, no. I'm always skeptical of concentrated power. Always.
Sure.
I take somebody that I know and like, and when they get a position of power and authority, I immediately become more skeptical of them. And I think that's actually a duty that we all should hold because power corrupts, and a power corrupted is abusive. And so we should all be kind of concerned about that. But, you know, Elon very clearly has both good and some concerning motivations for wanting to be in a role of that kind, cleaning up the government efficiency, understanding the debt crisis. These are all very positive. Also, I think on the positive side of the score, where a lot of people would disagree with this, it's not a question. This is not a question. It's in fact going to happen to the maximum degree possible anyway. Had Kamala Harris won this election, Elon Musk would be destroyed,
Yeah. Yes.
utterly
Yes. Yes.
destroyed. I mean, he would have been completely finished, probably in prison and or deported. I
New
mean,
York Times articles every day.
unbelievable destruction of this man. And so now he's in this kind of position, which if I was Elon Musk and I had the kind of money and power and status to gain that influence with incoming administration, he was one of the first people who just bluntly said it, right? Either we win this election or there might not be elections anymore. This will be the last election. And so he understands that they were going to destroy him
Oh yeah.
and that they're still going to try to destroy him. And so if I were Elon in that position, I'd be getting myself as cozied up to that new administration as humanly possible because it's literally his only hope to continue doing what he's doing and maybe to be a free man. So that is one of those things that kind of cuts both ways. I think it's more on the good side because we need a little bit of that edge up against this kind of monstrous regime that we're up against. And on the other hand, it's dangerous. That's dangerous energy to throw into the mix. It's not. I don't want to sound like Michel Foucault here. It's not that I'm saying that it's good or bad. I'm saying that it's dangerous.
Folks, I'm really excited to talk about Just Thrive and their new product, Just Calm. Life can be stressful. It can be overwhelming. It's not just your mind that suffers when you're feeling tense and anxious, because stress can make a mess of your digestion and immune system too. I had digestive issues all my life. This is something that I know a lot of you guys struggle with. Here's the thing. You can handle it with the help of Just Thrive Probiotic and Just Calm. You could say goodbye to frazzled nerves and hello to a steady, chill, more relaxed you. Just Calm's exclusive mood-lifting blend is clinically proven to help you relax and breathe a little easier in as little as 4 weeks. And for next level mood and immune support, I recommend Just Thrive Probiotic. It not only has 1,000 times better survivability than most probiotics, but this spore probiotic banishes bloat and constipation so your gut can produce more serotonin, which is your happy hormone. And I am someone who uses this regularly, so I can speak to it and how great it is for your digestive system. Plus, it supports better sleep. You can wake up feeling refreshed and revitalized. With Just Thrive and Just Calm, you'll have the ultimate stress-fighting duo to help you win the day, every day, with a money-back guarantee. What do you got to lose? For a limited time, you can save 20% off site-wide at justthrivehealth.com with promo code WELCOME. And a portion of every purchase goes to Vitamin Angels, which is a nonprofit organization that saves the lives of millions of kids and moms to be around the world by ensuring they get the vitamins and minerals they need to stay healthy and strong. By the way, if you want to learn more about this groundbreaking company, you can watch my interview with Tina Anderson. It's on my YouTube. Take control today with Just Thrive. That's justthrivehealth.com, promo code WELCOME for 20% off. Let's get back to the show. I agree with virtually everything you said. To your point, I trust Elon's judgment when it comes to the federal budget more than I trust Trump's. And
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
pretty much every Trump voter would agree with that. Trump did not have much of an appetite for cutting the budget at all. He's also not a details guy. And that's
No,
fine. Reagan wasn't a details guy at all.
except the
Elon is on
color of
this
the curtains.
Right. Elon is on the spectrum. Elon knows how to get granular and be super logical and be like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, cut this, cut that, don't cut this. Vivek, I'm sure, also would be a great asset in this regard. So of the three of those, in terms of who would I want if I had to have them have my budget in order, Trump would be by far the third. And I would bet money every Trump supporter would agree with that as well. He'd be great maybe in terms of marketing, but better than the other two. Maybe in terms of building a business, maybe we could make the argument. Boys, we can make that argument. But in terms of cutting, it's not going to. His whole lifestyle is opulence and overspending.
Right, right,
Gold
right.
toilets are not a good use of money.
No, they're not, not at all. Yeah, so I'm generally Doge positive for all of these reasons, and we are in a moment where we needed the guy, and it turns out that I think we actually ended up with the best guy for the job, and I say that with all of the reserved Elon skepticism that I think the amount of power and influence that he has right now, and his past philosophy, which isn't even far past, it's recent past in some
Right.
cases, that all warrants scrutiny and skepticism and concern. But at the same time, I think that for this job, you want the best guy. And we got probably, bar none, the best guy in the world.
Let's talk a little bit about some of your recent antics, for lack of a better term. What does this? I asked this of Cernish last week. What does this term woke right mean to you? And can you break it down at how it's used?
Well, since you just invoked the magic word of spectrum, I also am a bit spectral, if we will spin a pun here. So I am a little bit on this spectrum. I'm a mathematician, right? And so a lot of people have asked me through the years, well, what in the world does math have to do with analyzing Marxism or political currents or world politics or whatever else? And the answer that I give, obviously analyzing and cutting through the BS of Marxist writing and Marxist thought, the answer that I give is that mathematicians are obsessed with definitions. We really are. Because if you get a definition, if you observe some mathematical phenomenon and you want that to be the subject of a paper, let's say, or whatever, and you define that term a little bit wrong, nothing works. Because with math, everything is like ice cold mechanical logic, right? Once you have the axioms, once you have the definitions, every logical consequence is already there. It already follows. You just have
Can
to
I say,
figure out what
because
they
I
are.
was an accounting major, and the point is, when you have your balance sheet, if it's a penny off, you can't just be like, it's just a penny." It's like, "No, no, 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 no.
You
That mean
find the
it could be
penny.
$100 as well. It's some mistake I made somewhere, and that
That's
one
right.
penny could be $5,000 here and 4,099 on the other side." So
Yeah.
it's exactly like what you're saying.
Yeah. So we're really precise with definitions. So when I use a term like woke right, you can trust, and I'm not saying it like Trump, believe me. I've actually demonstrated this throughout my entire career. It's a repeated pattern for the pattern noticers out there. They can notice this pattern is that I have thought about how that term should be defined and how that definition creates implications
Okay.
before I start using a term. I do use a lot of stuff glibly, but some people can't tell the difference, but not everybody's, riding the full length school bus. That's okay. Uh, so woke means something very specific, and I've been beating this drum for years. So we got two terms, woke and right,
Yeah.
in the phrase woke right. Somebody accused it of being an idiom. It's not an idiom. An idiom is a saying where you can't
Right.
derive the meaning from the words,
It's
like
raining
don't
cats and
put your
dogs.
cart before
Yeah.
the horse. Yeah,
Yeah,
raining
yeah.
cats and dogs. Like you're looking around. My very literal daughter at one point was like, "Why are we talking about horses now?" When I said, "Don't put your cart before the horse."
I was
Right.
in North Korea, and we went to the greenhouse where they have a Kim Il Sungya plant named after, one's an orchid, and a Kim Jong-ilia plant, one's a begonia, and we had to sign the guest book, and someone wrote, "Venus flytrap, eat your heart out." And my guide says, "What does that mean?" Now try to explain the term Venus flytrap to a North Korean, and then try to explain "eat your heart out." I sat there, I'm like, "This expression makes absolutely no sense on any level."
Yeah, well, it turns out that happens in every language.
Yeah, of
There's I
course.
sometimes have been to China, and the translator is translating some guy. If you get a really good translator, they get everything, an interpreter. But then sometimes I'd have translators that were, kind of middle level, like HSK3 or whatever, and they would be like, "Yeah, what he just said is some Chinese idiom about bulls, and I don't have the slightest idea what it actually refers to." You know, and so you're just gonna have to nod and give thumbs up and do your best to figure out what he wants. And so it's just how it is. So
Yeah.
anyway, woke. Woke means having awakened. Duh, woke, awake. This is, you know, let's not complicate the matter here. Woke means having awakened to uh, a view of reality that is based on structural oppression. And in particular, that oppresses people like me to the exploitative benefit of people like them.
Right.
That's all woke means. Reality is the left woke calls it critical consciousness. You now have a critical consciousness of how the world is organized, but it's an oppressor versus oppressive dynamic, and that the belief is that the world, in fact, everything in the world, it's a metaphysical worldview. It is
Yes.
not. It's not like some beliefs. It is a when it's all the way there. It's not that everybody gets the whole thing or knows that they're in it. It's a full blown lens for how you view and interpret reality
Can I
around you.
say something? Because there's something I
Yeah.
think conservatives don't get. Because conservatives are like, "Why do you keep talking about race?" It's like, that's like saying, "Why do you keep talking about the Constitution?" It is literally the basis for your worldview. There's
Yeah.
nowhere else to go. Everything has to be viewed through the, like you said, lens. And in some sense, it's a form of Gnosticism, this
That's right.
form of hidden knowledge that once you are initiated into the mysteries, you realize everyone else is asleep, right, or clueless. It's their version of being red pilled.
That's right. That's exactly right. And everybody else has false consciousness or they're
Yes.
asleep or whatever. Yeah. So woke means having woke up to the true structure of reality. And it's actually structured by systems of power that generate oppression. And it's always this kind of like victim mentality is built right in. So it's in identity politics. So it's people like me who are oppressed, unless you have like the white guilt thing. And then it's like people like those poor victims are oppressed, with the empathy stick. And so woke means that. It doesn't mean left. And it doesn't mean necessarily believes in Marxist stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that care too much about race, although that's often implicated as part of the structural beliefs about reality. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're pro-trans. It means that you believe that there is a oppressor-based structure to social reality that colors your entire interpretation of reality. Then you could add one further thing because the woke actually do believe there's a duty of conscience that comes with this. The belief about oppression is that oppression is a dynamic. It's not that there's oppressor and oppressed as two separate things. They are two poles in a dynamic of oppression. So oppression creates an oppressed that's being done by an oppressor. So they're intrinsically linked. And the belief, at least from Marxism, from page, 2, I guess, of the Communist Manifesto, the main body of it, is explicitly that this is the engine. This is what it actually means for history to move. The entirety of human history is the history of the antagonism of classes. And so the oppressor versus oppressed is actually there in that first paragraph. So woke means that you woke up to this. Okay, fine. Well, what does woke right mean? Well, we often think of it as woke left. I've been actually being much more precise for a couple of years and saying woke woke Marxism to describe what I'm talking about on the left, because I think it is derived from Marxism. Woke right is kind of this.
Wait, isn't it explicitly derived from Marxism? The Foucault and all them, they were explicitly taken from
I think
Marxism, no?
so. I think so.
I
People
thought they were pretty
argue.
explicit about it.
They are quite explicit
Yeah,
about it.
okay.
And neo-Marxists were trying to revive Marxism that
Yeah.
wasn't taking hold in the West. The postmodernists had kind of given up on classical Marxist analysis, but wanted to do a new Marxist-style power analysis,
Yes. Yeah.
analysis of power and its manifestation through the more subtle aspects of life, like language and the structure of language and so on, as post-structuralism. And so, yes, it's derived from Marxism. So woke right are the basic definition is going to be people who act like the woke, although this is a very weak definition. People who act like the woke, same tactics, same victim mentality, same identity politics, same poor me, same, kind of very instrumental use of language, very instrumental use of knowledge, of concepts, of lies, that means justify the end. So lying and smearing and canceling and struggle sessions are all on the table in order to gain ideological growth or consensus, but also to gain obviously power. And so, but that do so using so-called right-wing traditionalist values. Now, this error has been made in history, and it's extremely well documented by some of the people who made this error, because I think it is an error to pick up, so to speak, the ring of power here, to say, well, what the left is doing is working, so I'm going to do that too, even though it's plainly evil. And that error is most thoroughly documented by a very proud German man named Adolf Hitler, who wrote repeatedly that he did this. Mein Kampf talks about it. He says repeatedly that he's the one who's actually going to execute Marxism, and he's going to get rid of the parts that don't work, but he's going to execute Marxism. So in other words, woke
Execute
right.
meaning put into practice, not kill.
Correct.
Okay, just to be clear.
Well,
Yeah.
probably both, honestly.
Well, both.
But
Yeah, sure.
yeah. But yes, put into practice. And so in truth, woke right is like a piss you off slang term, and they're going to probably clip that and run with it, but it is. That's part of the point, is if Sun Tzu said, if your enemy is of choleric temper, irritate him, And so woke right is like a piss you off slang term that means neo-fascist, where the neo here plays the same way as neo plays a neo-Marxist. It's a new theory. It's not the old, early 20th century stuff, but it's this same reaction that, and this is how you can summarize that reaction very simply. Communism basically puts out this sales pitch. There's this oppressor versus oppressed dynamic. The oppression is evil. We're the only people who understand it. So we should get in power and have all the control, and we'll end it. And fascism is a reaction that says, actually, the communists believe this and they're right. Reality is structured that way. There is oppression, but that's what held society together. So we need to do more of it.
Okay.
And so the woke right are people who, in some measure or another, have bought into this. Now, they choose different locuses for the power structure. Some of them have this very kind of intellectual concept called the post-war or post-World War II liberal consensus. Some of them just stick it in Israel. Some of them expand on that and say that it's the Jews, and that's spelled Joos, Jews, the Jews. And
Jews with a
those...
Z.
Well, it can end in a Z. That depends on how flippant we're being. But these lock together, right? They're interlocked, because the post-war liberal consensus in the very respectable side's telling, and I don't think most of these guys do much anti-Semitism, and they're telling, part of the post-war liberal consensus was, we're going to prevent the rise of fascism. We're also going to prevent the rise of Hitler. We will not have another Holocaust. And therefore, we also have to build Israel as a safe haven for the Jews. They may not jump in and say, and it's an ethno state and that's terrible, blah, blah, blah. They have other purposes with it. So there's this interlocking aspect between these kind of different factional beliefs, sort of like CRT and queer theory are not commensurate but interlocking beliefs through intersectionality. And the intersectional faction became the solution to those infights between the various leftist groups. We're not to the synthesis part of that fight, I think, with this neo-fascist woke right movement. But neo-fascist would be a more respectable, calm, let's not piss people off just to piss them off term for it. But it's not meant to be confusing. And for me, it was confusing that people were confused because I'm very clear in my definition of woke. The
Okay.
word that I don't think fits is right. I don't think these people are on the right because they run a leftist operating system, a leftist metaphysical worldview, but they're doing it in the name of traditional values. Where Marx said in the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, he says, all the revolutions of history draw their inspiration from kind of a romanticized past. But for him, the difference is that Marxism draws its inspiration from a romanticized future.
Right.
These guys are the characters that he's talking about. They're the old Hegelian, transformers of history, but transforming it into a rigid hierarchical structure of what they think they already have.
Folks, no one wants to think about debt, but the cold hard truth of it is many of us get deeper in debt during the holidays. Last year, half of American consumers took on debt to pay for the holidays. This year could be you, could be me. It's never too early to start planning to get out, and my friends at PDS Debt can help you with a personalized solution just for you. If you're making payments every month in your debt and your balances aren't going down, PDS has solutions for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies. There's no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit are accepted. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. I know what it's like to live with debt. It screws up your quality of life because it's kind of a cloud hanging over everything you do. You're thinking about, how am I going to pay this off? Is it going to get worse? It's just nagging and needling at you, and it's really unfortunate. It's something you really want to take care of just for your quality of life. Start planning today. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/welcome. Takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/welcome. pdsdebt.com/welcome. You owe it to yourself to get this monkey off your back. Guys, the days are shorter, but I bet your to-do lists aren't. You could power through those busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. From breakfast to dinner and anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Whether you like routine or you like mixing things up, Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options you can add to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. Don't let shorter days slow you down. You can stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Factor lets you do you. You've got 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, avoid meat, or eat well-balanced. And because their meals are chef-prepared and dietitian approved, you're going to love how they taste, but also how they support your goals. I can speak to that from personal experience. Great stuff from them. You could have guilt-free comfort foods like home-style chicken and gravy. You could have globally inspired flavors like Peruvian shrimp. There's no sacrificing quality for convenience with Factor because their weekly menus offer ways to treat yourself to a restaurant-like meal experience with gourmet plus dishes with premium proteins and seasonal sides. Use your time more efficiently. Let Factor take shopping, prepping, cooking, and cleaning off your daily list of things to do. Head to factormeals.com/50you're-welcome, YOUR, and use code 50you're-welcome to get 50% off your first box and free shipping. That's code 50you're-welcome at factormeals.com/50you're-welcome to get half off your first box plus free shipping while your subscription is active. It's delicious, it's convenient, and it's cool. Highly recommended. Let's get back to the show. I think one of the reasons you might be confused or not is I think you underappreciate to what extent human beings see things not through a true false filter, but through an us-them filter. And since
No, that's totally.
woke is them and right is, broadly speaking, from their perspective, us, even the bad parts of the right. Your term is what's it called? Something self-contradictory, like military intelligence.
Self-contradictory.
Yeah, what's the paradox? Not paradox. What's the word I'm thinking of?
Oxymoron.
Oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. That shows how stupid you are because everyone knows woke means left and we're right. So how could they be that? So that's how they reason. It's just simple as that.
Well, that's where we get into the conspiracy theory side because maybe this isn't even all that organic. Maybe it's paid for by the same people, like with World War II, where the fascists and the communists were paid for by the same people. which is, I'm not gonna get. I don't have proof that that's happening. I would strongly suspect that it's happening. That if you have bad actors who have global ambitions, and the tool that they've been using is, say, the left, and then the left runs into actual serious opposition that it may not be able to overcome. It's like I've said before, if we're boxing and I keep punching you with my left hand and I get you to just watch my left hand, you're getting knocked out with my right because you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
looking for it. And I would switch gears.
yeah.
They don't the goal for the if there is a global plot, let's put it that way. We'll avoid the tinfoil hat. If there is a global plot, the plot is to get liberty out of the way, is to get the Constitution of the United States as a kind of practical measure out of the way. It doesn't matter really how you do it. It doesn't matter if you use just saying strictly on the left, pure communism, or if you say import a bunch of Muslims who are not communists because they break the hegemony of Western values. It doesn't matter which tools you use, right? And so if the leftist agenda is now starting to backfire and prevent you from achieving your actual goal of dismantling individual liberty, then you step in and come at it from we're the only true reaction that can fight this off. And of course, it's actually designed to dismantle the Constitution as well. And so, whether or not that's what's happening, I would suspect it is. I don't have hard proof. I don't have statements from Klaus Schwab saying something like, if we cannot get it through the left, we will get it through the right.
Right.
He has never said anything like that to my knowledge. But this is that's what I mean by the term anyway. And I don't so let's do the semantic thing too, just to put it on the table. Maybe the term sucks. I totally get the oxymoron thing, right? And I totally get that it's literally an in your face glib middle finger actually to the people doing this, because calling them woke seems to be like they got a bee sting on their eyeball or something. They just flip out. Maybe it's not the best term though. Maybe neo-fascist is the best term. Maybe woke fascism is the best term. Maybe there's some other term. Who knows? Right. But the fact of the matter is that I think what we need to start to agree on, regardless of what we call it, is that the phenomenon is happening. Lines should be drawn around it. And we need to have serious conversations and debates about whether or not that's the right direction to go, which I think it is not.
I think it's kind of I sometimes when people have views that are just so apparently self-contradictory to me, I don't even bother engaging because I'm like, this is not what it is. It can't be what it is in face value. Like a good example is this whole Queers for Palestine thing. I'm like, okay, something's not adding up here. This is not being done in good faith. You can't with a straight face say this. So I'm just going to take a step back because there's no beneficial conversation to be had. And another example is this: there's this hope, I guess, with a lot of these people that you're referring to, that Trump is a crypto Nazi. And it's like, I think to divorce Nazism from anti-Semitism is crazy, for lack of a better term. And the fact that his daughter converted to Judaism and that he's clearly the most Zionist he's more Zionist than me, and I went to yeshiva, is really, it's just bizarre to me that they think, well, he doesn't really mean it. And once he gets into office, he's going to take the yarmulke off and abandon Israel. I don't get it at all. Especially someone who's like a New York real estate guy. I'm sure he has some kind of low key, bougie anti-Semitism in terms of like, oh God, but in terms of like Israel, he's their guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the most Zionist president that I remember. I don't remember. I was a child during Reagan, so I can't say much about that. And before Reagan, I wasn't even. Well, I actually was born during Carter. Not that I remember a minute of it, but yeah, I think that he's actually, in some sense, this weird kryptonite. I think there was a lot of hope, but my concern, which there's always the concern, is I know how wedge politics works, right?
Sure.
I understand how the woke work. And the woke work, I used to say this a lot, was the woke are not, they are now. Everything changed in the last few years, over the last 4 years particularly. But the woke were typically not aiming to become, the head of X administration. They were aiming to be like the third guy down, where they have a lot of influence, a lot of ability to implement policy, a lot of
Hold on.
ability to
Can I say
hire
something?
their
Do you know what
friends.
this is?
What's that?
This is the HR department.
Yeah, no kidding.
They don't want to be the CEO. I just got to run HR and I'm set.
Yeah, or be second in command because there's
Yeah.
less scrutiny on second in command versus first in command. And the main thing they start doing is hiring their friends.
Yes.
They don't even start with policy. They start populating. This is how the long march. People ask me all the time, James, how do we run the long march through the institutions back against them? Well, you get into positions and hire your friends. That's
Yeah.
how. And the
And Trump's
problem
doing
is,
that.
they're right. Trump is doing it, but everybody's kind of going to start doing this all at once. And so I'm
Yeah.
just kind of hoping that we have enough discernment to make wise choices, because there
Okay.
were a lot of people who covet power ostensibly on our side who are not going to wield it responsibly. And we're already in my opinion, is we're already in precarious enough of a
Oh,
moment
yes.
that we definitely don't need to be dragging more ideological lunatics into positions of power.
Before we get into that hoax you recently did, you said something earlier. I just really want to make sure I ask before we move on. I'm always fascinated when people become, especially bright people who are, have a good understanding of politics, get red pilled. So I would love for you to walk us through your mental processes that went from memeing is gross and this is unpresidential and beneath him to this is great. Because that is something that I'm sure a lot of people have friends who like hate Trump on that level, would love to know those steps that they can convert them.
Yeah, as it turns out, the answer is profound, and I actually know the answer. I've actually reflected on this. So I had reached a point somewhere in the middle of Trump's first term, but I don't know when that point was. It was a very not self-aware phenomenon where I knew voting for Trump in 2020 was going to be the right thing to do, but I refused to admit it, even to
Okay.
myself. I
Wow.
refused to do it. Okay. So I knew that the Democrats were too dangerous, the woke was too strong and was too influential over their party, and that Trump actually had run a fairly good presidency in terms of over. I mean, it wasn't totally effective. There was a lot of stuff you can criticize, but on balance, he had done a pretty good job with a lot of policy that actually was like, hey, wait, there's peace what and where, you
Right.
know. And I became aware actually, and this is really really embarrassing to admit, but I tend to run as an open book. Uh, there was actually a troll right back in 2016 that was like, and they tweeted at me, and it's just some guy probably with 30 followers. So never doubt how much influence you can have. Who tweeted at me and was like, in 2020, you will vote for, you won't just like Trump, you'll vote for him and be proud of it. And I was in my life, I remembered that stupid troll tweet with like a cartoon character avatar. And I was like, fuck that guy. No, I won't. I was resisting
It
giving
was
in
your future self. You
to
went back in
MAGA.
time.
I know. I was resisting giving into MAGA completely because of a 30 follower troll who told me,
Okay.
it's destiny that you're going to support Trump in 4 years and you're going to think he's great. And so what happened, and this is the kind of, I think, key part of the story, was we were sitting on the couch, my wife and I think I was sitting in the chair across the room, but we were in the living room together anyway. My wife just starts cracking up. And I'm like, what? Anytime somebody else in the house starts laughing, you have to ask them what's
Of
funny, right?
course.
Everybody
Of
has to
course.
know the funny thing. And she's dying, like, can't tell me, cracking up. And then what she squeaks out through the laughs is, I'm voting for him. I don't care. And then she just turns her phone around, and it was the meme where President Trump, as president, by the way, he was president of the United States, had put the meme on social media where it shows Joe Biden in a nursing home and it says Biden for resident, but it said president with the P crossed out. And I've looked this meme up. It's low quality. It is not a high quality. I mean,
It's
it's
a
like
boomer meme.
it's not just a boomer meme. It's like boomer meme from the second to bottom shelf. Like, it's poorly made. It's not. It's junky. But there's a certain like kitsch to junky memes
Yeah,
sometimes,
of
right?
course.
I got my junky meme guy who makes junky memes for me on purpose, and some of them are so funny I have to share them. But so Biden for resident made my wife laugh, and then she said, I'm voting for him. And I looked at the meme and I started laughing, and then I said, I am too. And so what was happening was, for about a year, or probably a little more than a year, I knew that I needed to give up the pretense, but I'm still giving that, random anon the finger in my head, being stubborn. But I knew, and it wasn't until my social circle gave me permission that I decided that, yeah, I can give in to this too. I know it's the right thing to do, but there's so much weird social stigma about it. And I have so much pride wrapped up in my TDS, even though I don't have TDS anymore, that I didn't want to admit that I was catastrophically wrong in 2016, horrifyingly wrong, and should have been able to see it, that I needed somebody who I valued highly in my life to give me something that amounted to permission to do what I knew I needed to do, and which my mind had already been changed maybe a
Okay.
year. So I give this in public talks all the time. I think it's very important to understand there are a lot of people in your life who have already changed their mind, but
Yeah.
they can't admit it because they don't feel like they have permission
Yeah.
to say it. And it turns out that something that's really funny that cuts kind of through the noise, I was like, okay, since you specifically asked, it wasn't just that's where I tipped over to support for Trump and MAGA, but where you specifically asked where I became positive about the memeing. Well, obviously his boomer junk meme
Yeah.
got me. And I'm like, no, the memes are freaking hilarious. And it was like this weird moment where it went from, I'm not allowed to think President Trump is funny to President Trump is actually hilarious. And I kind of binged on how funny he was. And one of the things I did is I went back and watched his stuff from the primary in 2016, where
Oh,
he's like calling Jeb Bush low energy, and he's like little Marco, Liddle, little Marco. And it's the funniest thing I'd ever watched. It was 10 times better than any stand-up routine I'd ever seen. And once I started thinking he was funny, now you're in meme core.
hey, folks, Michael Malice here, tolerated author, Twitter asshole, and sheath underwear model. I love wearing sheath. I wear it every single day. They're the most comfortable briefs you'll ever wear. And I'm currently designing a new pair of sheath based on a certain type of fish, which you'll see in the coming months. Every time you hear my voice, you should know I'm wearing sheath. And what makes sheath different is that they have dual pouch technology. They have one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. Sounds weird, but when you put them on, they're going to be super comfortable. They keep you cool in the hot weather, keep you nice and snug in an interview, on a date, doing a podcast, so on and so forth. After you tried Sheath, you're never going back to the other brands. Support the underwear that supports you. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code MALICE, 20% off. They've got shirts, they've got hoodies, they've got mesh ones. They have something for you. They also have a girls line, but since women aren't allowed to listen to the show, I can't help you. Sheathunderwear.com, promo code Malice.
Hey, it's Adam Carolla.
And this is Dr. Drew. We're back doing our podcast 3 times a week, talking about current events, health news, and more.
So, if you miss us on Loveline, check out the Adam and Dr. Drew show. New episodes Wednesday through Friday, available wherever you find finer podcasts.
Let's get back to the show. There was it's interesting because it's also very hard to convince people that someone is an authoritarian if they're funny. Because
Yeah.
the authoritarians are by and large humorless, and they have to be, because humor, and Reagan used this against the Soviet Union. I talk about this in The White Pill extensively. It's a very effective way of undercutting authoritarianism. At the very least, if you just even if it's nice laughter, you're still laughing at that person in charge. And if you're laughing at that dictator, all of a sudden, wait a minute, this guy's a person just like you and me, and a lot of the stuff falls away. So that, I think, is a really interesting approach. And I think it's very clear that let me ask this though. You co-authored that book with Peter Boghossian. He seemed to be very anti-Trump for quite some time. Did that cause animosity between the two of you?
No, Peter and I have always had a very good, open relationship where even when we
Okay.
disagree, we can talk about it, and usually laughing, actually. Um, So no animosity there. Peter has a fantastic sense of humor,
Okay.
and so it's very difficult to find, a catastrophic disagreement with Pete, because he's willing to hear it out. He's willing to talk about it, and he's willing to laugh his head off about whatever. And it's very disarming. It's hard to get mad at him because of his thoughts or his beliefs. He articulates what they are fairly well, and so no, we never had he and I never had a relationship issue over the Trump division. But Peter is a uniquely,
So
sociable and likable guy.
I wish that were more common. I mean, that's just really unfortunate when people are like, especially families, like, oh, you voted for Trump, I don't want to see you at Thanksgiving. It's like, I'm not implementing his policies. I could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like, there's so
Yeah.
many. It's just like, this is really, but it's such a it's, I think it goes to the hygiene metric, where
Yeah, yeah.
basically it's like it's an infection at the Thanksgiving dinner table, and now he's in our house, and you got to panic because it's like almost like a zombies inside the house. Like once you get one, we're all gonna be doomed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that's exactly it.
I want to hear what I want to hear from the horse's mouth. Your breakdown. You wrote this hoax piece for this Christian Nationalist website, and I really want to hear you walk us through it.
All right. So this is, I mean, I actually did a thread telling the story. The stories, this is the like, when we did the grievance studies affair, let's back up back in 17 and 18. I'm just going to assume people know what that is now. We hoaxed the woke left academia. Okay. That's the whole story. When we did that, that was like, we really put a lot of thought into how are we going to do this? What's going to be this? What are we going to, everything was, we were a small committee, but everything was by committee. It was like a lot of very concerned we're going to get canceled if we're not very careful. But this new woke right hoax or American reformer hoax was absolutely the opposite. I was flying to Alaska for a speaking event. I got asked to speak in Anchorage. I don't know if you've been there, but it's far away. So I boarded I got my connecting flight in O'Hare, and it's a 7.5 hour flight from Chicago. So
That's
I
it.
had some,
That's not that bad. I thought it'd be more. Okay.
I mean, it's pretty far for it's still in the same country.
Sure. Sure.
But yeah, so that's a pretty long flight. You're
Yeah.
on a 737, so it's not like you're on one of the big ones and you're going to get to lay down or whatever and take a nap. And it was daytime, so it was like, you're not tired. So I was like, I have time to kill. And for a while, I have another mea culpa moment, right? Another James is a retard moment.
I brought that word back. I take credit for it. I called Kamala Harris that on Rogan. One person had an issue with that word. The leftists just said, how can you say she's dumb when she was attorney general? I've reclaimed that word. Don't take this away from me.
I'll give it to you. But the fact is, I think it's me that made the popular consensus. I will take credit for the popular consensus. And in fact, I think President Trump calling her a Marxist.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's
because I had that viral video with Charlie Kirk where I
Yeah.
explained, able to see what can be
Yeah.
unburdened by what
Yes.
has been as Marxist. And then it was like a week and a half later that, first of all, that went viral like to 100 and something million views. It was insane. And then like in my Twitter analytics, there's like the whole year, and then there's this one spike that's just, crazy. And it's that video. But Trump called her a Marxist like the next week.
Yeah.
Right.
And he watches Charlie Kirk. There's no way he didn't see it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I'm flying to Alaska, and here's my mea culpa. I'm like, I have this whole anti-communist podcast where literally my brand is that I read communist stuff and tell people what it means, right? And break it down. Well, I've never done the Communist Manifesto. So I was like, I need to reread the Communist Manifesto and decide if it'd make for a good podcast. I had read it like 2 years ago, and I was like, I don't really like how it's not like shocking enough or whatever. And so actually it is. I was kind of just stupid at the time, but I was like, I'm going to reread it. Right. But I also had in the back of my head an idea that had popped up a couple times that I just kind of ignored, which was, this, I've been trying to call out Christian nationalism and or woke right, whatever phrase we want to use, for a while at this point. This wasn't like stuff that started, this summer. I've been beefing with these people back to January 21. So it's been a while that I've been like looking into what they're doing and beefing with these people. And I finally decided like they're not letting me criticize them. I'm effectively getting canceled in my speaking, at least in some of my professional circuit by these. I mean, they are actually successfully canceling me. And so I was like, I've been here before, though. I tried to criticize the woke left. They said, you're all these things. You're terrible. You can't do it. They wouldn't let me. The criticisms weren't admitted. Nobody could see it. They didn't believe that what we were describing in academia was happening. And so it was like, show, don't tell. What did we do? We hoaxed them. It was show, don't tell. And then I was like, LFG, right? And so I'm reading the Communist Manifesto on my flight. It turns out the body's 13 pages long, so it's not very entertaining. It doesn't take very long. And I'm reading that first chapter, and I'm like, my God, his argument about what the bourgeoisie has done to society is exactly the Christian nationalist argument about what the so-called post-war liberal consensus has done to society. It's the same exact argument. Of course, you have to like where he's talking about markets, you have to like fudge it around to something else like faith or something. So I just copy pasted like 6 pages into an email, and then I just tweaked the words to where I wanted. And then I sent it to myself, and then, went back to like playing on the internet or whatever on my flight. Get to Anchorage, do some Anchorage stuff. Turns out I have like a dead hour or two one day, or 3 hours one day. And so I go back to my room and I'm like, copy paste it out of the email into a Word document, edit it once through to make it a little tighter. Turns out it was about 1,000 words too long. So I was like, I don't know what to do with this right now. It's too long for their submission requirements. They might take it. Flew home, edited it down one time, and was like, is this a bad idea? This is probably a bad idea. And then I made a burner email on Proton and just sent it. I was like, you know what? I just don't want to think about it anymore. Let's just get it done. And if something happens, something happens. I don't really care. It was the most, I don't know, the most.
It's like taking a dump.
Yeah, it was just like glib. It was just, man, fuck it. Let's try it. See what happens. And they said on their website, it says, if you haven't heard back from us in 10 days, consider it, rejected. We get a ton of submissions, which is standard. So 10 days go by. I've got my burner email account. I never check it, or wouldn't have checked it, but 10 days go by and nope, nothing, no reply. Okay. They rejected it. Didn't work. Womp womp. It was kind of obvious. Like it was really obvious. And so then, a couple weeks go by from there. It turns out they had accepted it and they published it on the 18th. Well, on the 28th, I was at Thanksgiving dinner with my family and I thought, I should go home and check that email account. I don't have it on my phone. I only had it on my laptop because it's like a burner. And so I was like, I should check that. So when I got home, I eventually remembered and I checked the email and it was like, I had an email from the editor and it just said, the whole email is, we're going to need a headshot for this.
Oh, wow.
No, like we accept this. This is,
Yeah.
just we're going to need a headshot for this. So I went to a stock photo site, typed in male, scrolled until I found a guy that looked dorky enough, took a screenshot of the picture, and then gave it the name.
It wasn't a stock. It was just a mirror, you liar.
Yeah, no, this guy's got red curly hair and looks like he might be, a Baptist or something. And so I took a screenshot of it and called it Marcus Headshot 03. I'm still so amused that I thought to put 03 like it's in one of them in a series. Yeah. And I just sent it off. And then I call my colleagues, my new discourses people, and I'm like, I think they accepted this thing. They didn't even know that I had done this.
Right.
I didn't even, people are like, it's a conspiracy. I was like, so I should tell you something. And then I think they accepted it. And then, they were like, well, what if they publish it? Well, oh my gosh, are they going to, have they emailed you back? And then we got off the phone and literally my one business partner went to go to the bathroom. It searched the name Marcus Carlson and pop, there it is. So I named it, the author Marcus Carlson because it sounds like Karl Marx. Right. A lot of people thought I was making fun of Tucker Carlson, but it didn't cross my mind. Okay, yeah. And so it turns out it popped up there. Like he sent me a text. He's like, they published it 10 days ago. I was like, what? Oh my God. And so I go looking immediately. I have to go to the bathroom now. So I go to the bathroom and I go to the article and I'm like, holy shit, there it is. And I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling down to the bottom. And I'm like reading the comments, 18 comments. And one of the comments was like, do you know this is the Communist Manifesto? And it's like quotes straight from both, like comparative. And I'm like, oh no, they're going to take this down. But that's been there 10 days. They don't care. And it was like, this is incredible. So that was,
or they don't read comments like smart people.
That was like Thursday of last week. And I was like, I just want to get this out of my life. Yeah. I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. So let's aim to get it out on Tuesday. And so I put together, the write-up over the weekend, got it to my guy. And then we were all at meetings for New Discourses, year-end meetings and Christmas party at the beginning. We're all together in Orlando this week. And he was like, my web guy was like, I have to drive home and it's going to take all day. So I have to publish this early in the morning. I was like, all right, let's go. And so I was sitting at breakfast. We published it and it's been a very interesting ride ever since. But like I said, all I did was take 6 or so pages of the Communist Manifesto and I swapped out everywhere he talks about the bourgeoisie. I blamed either the post-war liberal consensus, liberalism, liberals, or classical liberalism, more specifically, some variation in the wording. And then everywhere he extolled the proletariat, I put in this new Christian right. Or if he talked about the communists, I put in new Christian right. And then it was just a matter of you had to change a couple of the concepts because to make them match with the theme. Edited it so it's kind of smooth. Took a little bit of the obvious edge off, and then I had to shrink it down. So like paragraphs ended up disappearing in the middle to make it short enough to submit. And I just sent it off, and then there it is. It got published. And so I was like, well, I'll tell the world. And even if you read my write-up, I'm like really circumspect. I'm like, I don't know what, I just wanted to do this experiment to see what happens. I didn't come in like in your face American reformer,
Right.
deal with it Christians, because I'm not even targeting Christians. I'm targeting Christians in the same way that going after feminism is targeting women, which is to say not at all. And so it's been more interesting what has happened since than the fact of the publication. It could have been, they got us. This is embarrassing, and we're going to take the article down and just deal with whatever fallout the fact of it is and the controversy. But instead, the internet has erupted in the most amusing but somewhat horrifying way. They're like, no, Karl Marx was right about a lot of stuff. Karl Marx, in fact, had a very good critique of liberalism, and he has a fantastic critique of how it, tears apart social bonds and undermines, faith and all of this other stuff. I'm like, he wanted to abolish religion. What do you mean it undermines faith? What are you talking about? And then now it's somehow sprawled into Hitler had it right, and it's like, this is really going bonkers. So now the primary vector of response, there's a lot of the normal junk I got back in the grievance studies days too. Like, oh, you changed it too much. It doesn't really prove anything. James Lindsay's a nasty atheist, bad person, whatever. There's a lot of that, low tier trash that they're saying, but the primary vectors that they're using to defend themselves, including they kept the article up, put it in my name now instead of Marcus Carlson, and added an editor's note saying that they're keeping it up because it is and I quote, reasonable aggregation of some new right ideas.
Okay.
So they're not just standing by it, which I think they should do. I think the grievance studies paper should still be up if they didn't use fake data. The ones that did should not, because it's fake data, obviously. But they didn't just stand by it. They're like, yeah, this is us. This is who we are. Right. And I'm like, that's okay. QED, case closed, I guess. Whether we want to call that woke or not is its own debate. That's semantic. But you agree with the operating system of the Communist Manifesto, the oppressor versus oppressed dynamic, the intrinsic, conflict of history, the mechanisms and means, and the intrinsic rightness of the oppressed category versus the intrinsic wrongness, the Manichaean, since you mentioned Gnostic earlier, the Manichaean good versus evil dichotomy.
Is that how it's pronounced?
I don't know.
I thought it was Manichaean.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I read. I don't.
Okay.
I don't listen to smart people. I only read.
Okay.
It might be Manichaean.
Yeah.
It's probably Manichaean.
Okay.
But I say it wrong. It sounds like an idiot. That's fine.
Ludwig von Mises complained about this because he had a thick German accent. He goes, issues in my accent, it's that I write about economics and a lot of these words I never heard spoken out loud. So I'm just trying to guess what they sound like, and I sound like a crazy person.
Oh yeah, especially when they're like derived from French. You just you fail. You should have saw me trying to learn some of these Russian words as I started to study the Soviets. Woof. We did not do a good job with that.
Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where James took questions from supporting listeners. James, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Actually, the whole thing, honestly, Michael, your openness to explore the topics that we explored in like a receptive way, even knowing that you may not agree. I think you disagree with some of the things that I may have said or that I did say. And so, but the receptiveness to the discussion, to trying to learn something, kind and friendly pushback, the whole thing is just pleasant to be able to have discussions like that, regardless of whether or not we agree on every point, and not getting lost in some stupid semantic argument, which I think is the grandest waste of time possible.
You are welcome.
Pluto TV is a place for movie fans like me.
And TV fans like me.
They've got something for everyone, and it's free.
I love free, and I love Jersey Shore.
For me, it's The Godfather.
SpongeBob SquarePants. I am Patrick. Patrick is me.
Oh, Forrest Gump, come on.
Criminal Minds, solving crime after bedtime.
Whatever you love to watch, Pluto TV makes it easy with thousands of free movies and shows.
Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.